An unexpected gesture from my neighbor left me questioning everything. You won't believe what happened. Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments section, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. As the clock struck 6 in the evening, I became aware of a gentle rap at my door. A knock that strikes a balance, neither pressing nor overly relaxed, a touch hesitant in its own skin. Indeed, that is the term. Uncertain, it was as if the person on the other side wavered, unsure of their rightful place in that moment. As I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing the final remnants of the dinner dishes, the warm aroma of roasted rosemary chicken hung in the air, a comforting reminder of the meal just shared. The sky beyond my window was adorned in that unique blend of orange and purple that only the early spring sunsets could summon. A serene calm enveloped the surroundings. Foreseeable. The sound of that knock altered everything. I wiped my hands on the towel that draped elegantly by the stove, adjusted my cardigan with a gentle touch, and made my way to the front door. Surprise was the last thing on my mind. I truly never did. In the years that followed Mark's passing, life seemed to take on a slower rhythm. Life had settled into a soothing cadence of tranquil days, adorned with the gentle art of gardening, the immersive escape of reading, and the cherished ritual of a weekly coffee with Linda from the neighborhood book club. As I turned the doorknob and pushed the door ajar, there stood Ben, my neighbor from next door. We had shared fleeting smiles across the fences and engaged in a handful of brief conversations while tending to the trash bins or pulling weeds along the boundary of our properties. He was a handful of years my junior, perhaps in his late 40s or early 50s. It was said that she had divorced and taken up residence here roughly 2 years prior. Perpetually gentle, softly spoken, and somewhat introspective, that evening, he appeared anxious, his fingers tightly gripping a small basket swathed in a linen cloth. "Hi, Susan," he said, his voice slightly husky, as if he had cleared his throat a few times before approaching. "I apologize for the sudden visit, but I found myself with an abundance of scones and thought you might enjoy a few." I blinked, momentarily caught off guard.
Ah, scone.
It was the final outcome I had never anticipated. My heart fluttered slightly, not from excitement, not just yet, but from a swirl of confusion and curiosity. A figure approaches, carrying a basket of baked delights as the sun dips below the horizon. Such an occurrence had not transpired since my days in college. I grinned, perhaps a bit too widely. "Your kindness is truly appreciated, Ben. I would greatly appreciate some. Would you care to step inside? If you're not pressed for time, I have some tea ready for you." He paused for a fleeting moment, just long enough to stir a doubt within me about whether I had overstepped my bounds. He nodded in response. "Tea seems quite delightful." In the sunroom, we lingered as the final rays of daylight poured through the windows, enveloping the space in a warm, golden glow. I poured chamomile into the familiar porcelain cup, the very one I used to sip from on those chilly evenings. Tea possessed an intriguing sense of comfort, a blend of the familiar and the novel. Ben was not one for conversation, and I found myself in a similar state lately, yet the quiet that enveloped us felt anything but awkward. It truly felt warm and gentle, as if we were both partaking in an unspoken connection that transcended the need for words. He shared that he had recently taken up baking as a hobby, mentioning how it soothed his mind after long days spent working from home. Every word captivated me, and I observed the subtle furrow of his brow as he spoke of his teenage daughter, who primarily resided with her mother. "I miss her," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Isn't it peculiar? You nurture them, pour your heart into their growth, and then, in an instant, they transform into a part of someone else's world." I inclined my head in agreement. I grasped far more than he could ever realize, the poignant void that lingers when children embark on their own journeys, leaving behind echoes of their presence. "That's not strange at all," I remarked softly. "It's simply the essence of parenthood. I believe this is the most challenging aspect. Releasing the grip." In that fleeting instant, our gazes intertwined, if only for a heartbeat, and I beheld something. Perhaps acknowledgement. A deep-seated sorrow nestled beneath the layers of resilience and the relentless pursuit of perseverance. As he departed an hour later, having indulged in 3 scones and 2 cups of tea, a long dormant feeling began to awaken within me. A gentle warmth blooms within my chest. A brief glimmer, that evening, as I nestled into bed, the basket he had brought lingered on the counter, a solitary scone remaining within. I gazed at the ceiling, pondering whether it was mere kindness or something deeper at play. I reassured myself to refrain from overanalyzing the situation. I found myself at the age of 55. He was merely extending a gesture of goodwill, that was everything. Yet, a soft murmur from the depths of my thoughts beckoned me to acknowledge a truth I had long silenced. It is perfectly acceptable to embrace your emotions once more. For the first time in ages, I allowed that voice to linger, no longer shoving it aside. It was not until 3 days had slipped by that I laid eyes on Ben once more. I had persuaded myself that the tea and scones were merely a fleeting indulgence, a brief yet poignant act of goodwill between neighbors. Yet, each time I walked by the sunroom or caught a glimpse of his house, a gentle, unfamiliar flutter stirred within my chest. It was a foolish thing, I reminded myself, immature. Yet, I found myself straining to catch the faintest sound of footsteps beyond the door, lingering a moment longer in front of the mirror, perfecting my hair. And so, Saturday arrived. The day had blossomed with an unexpected warmth, whispering sweet promises of summer to come. The morning had slipped away as I meticulously trimmed the lavender bushes that lined the fence, when suddenly, a voice pierced the tranquility. "Do you require assistance?" I pivoted, and there he stood. Ben stood at the boundary of his yard, sleeves rolled up, a shovel gripped in one hand, and a playful grin dancing across his face. He remarked that he was attempting to make his garden appear even half as lovely as yours. As I nod toward the vibrant bursts of purple and yellow that adorn my walkway, yet I find myself merely excavating the earth, clinging to the faintest glimmer of hope for a miracle. I chuckled, brushing the sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. Out here, miracles and mulch are essentially one and the same. He let out a soft laugh and propped the shovel against the fence. In truth, a different thought crossed my mind. Would you care to join me for dinner this evening? Nothing extravagant, merely a creation I'm assembling. I would relish the presence of companionship. I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. For a fleeting instant, I questioned whether I had truly heard him or if it was merely a figment of my imagination, yet his gaze held a sincerity, a flicker of doubt, yet remained inviting. An evening meal, shared with a gentleman in his abode. It had been, my word, more than 10 years since I found myself in such a predicament. This time, my smile unfolded with a gentle slowness. I would truly cherish that opportunity. Ben's home mirrored his essence perfectly, orderly and modest, adorned with subtle personal details that hinted at depths he may not have fully acknowledged. Along the hallway, framed photos of his daughter created a warm tapestry of memories, while a bookshelf brimming with travel guides stood proudly in the living room, hinting at adventures yet to come. Upon the table, he had arranged candles with care, just 2, nothing extravagant, and a lasagna that enveloped the space with an aroma that instantly evokes a sense of home. As we dined, the dialogue unfolded with a newfound ease. We delved into our histories, exploring not merely the events, but the nuances that lingered in the silence between them. "I once imagined myself retiring in Italy," he remarked, a wistful smile gracing his lips, "opening a quaint little cafe by the water." Yet, fate had its own designs. I inclined my head in agreement. Mark and I envisioned a journey across the country in an RV. We have even selected the model. Then his heart faltered far too early. The words flowed forth with a surprising ease that I hadn't anticipated. Typically, I steered clear of discussions regarding Mark. It resonated as a deep betrayal. Yet with Ben, it simply did not. He maintained his gaze, avoiding the temptation of trite expressions. He merely absorbed the words spoken. Once dinner had concluded, we retreated to the back porch. The sky had transformed into a gentle velvet canvas, with stars starting to emerge from their slumber. The tranquility enveloped the scene once more, interwoven with the gentle buzz of cicadas and the faint tinkling of wind chimes drifting from a nearby garden. "I'm glad you came," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "This house has long ceased to be merely a refuge for slumber." I gazed at him then, truly gazed, the soft creases framing his gaze, the manner in which his hands lay upon the chair's arms, unwavering and firm. Then he surprised me once more with his actions. He extended his hand toward mine. He neither grasped it nor drew it closer to himself. His fingers lightly grazed mine, a subtle beckoning. For a moment, I paused, not due to a lack of desire, but rather because the sensation of being touched with such tenderness had slipped from my memory. It lacked any sense of urgency, instead radiating warmth and respect, a connection that conveyed a deep understanding and a desire to truly know the other person. I allowed my fingers to entwine with his. We lingered in that moment, our hands gently placed between us, two souls connected by an unvoiced bond, something undeniably authentic. As I strolled home beneath the shimmering stars, my heart beat at a measured pace, no longer racing with anxiety or doubt, but resonating with an unfamiliar tranquility, a steadiness I realized I had longed for. That evening, I found myself by the window, pen in hand, as I penned a solitary sentence in my journal for the first time in years. A stirring is occurring within me once more. Uncertainty loomed over the path ahead, leaving me in the dark about its destination. Yet, I was aware of this. It had transcended the mere notion of a neighbor. It revolved around the notion of possibility, a journey to unearth a facet of myself I believed had slipped away with the passage of time. For the first time in ages, a sense of curiosity about tomorrow stirred within me. Nearly 2 weeks had passed since that evening on Ben's porch, since that soft caress, since I allowed someone to breach my defenses, even if just a fraction. In the stillness that ensued, existence embraced a new cadence. Nuanced changes, delicate movements. As I tended to the garden, Ben's hand rose in a friendly wave from his kitchen window. One morning, he placed a warm loaf of bread at my doorstep, accompanied by a sticky note that read, "Still practicing. Please inform me if you notice any improvement in my progress." It lacked grandeur or sweeping drama, not the material of epic tales, yet it held a profound authenticity. One afternoon, following a fleeting rain that had rendered the sidewalks moist and infused the air with the scent of damp earth and lilacs, he called out. "Hey," he said. "I realize this is rather sudden, but I find myself in need of a stroll. Care for some company?" I acted without a moment's pause. "I shall retrieve my jacket." At the intersection of our street, we encountered one another beneath the sprawling branches of ancient oak trees that loomed overhead. Resembling vigilant sentinels, the clouds started to disperse, allowing delicate rays of sunlight to descend and caress the pavement below. All around, there was a sense of renewal, as if the world had just emerged from a cleansing rain. We strolled leisurely, not out of weariness, but because neither of us felt the urgency to reach any destination on that day. An intangible essence lingered in the atmosphere, a subtle vibrancy that infused life into every moment. Initially, our conversation revolved around the little details, his job and my recent endeavor to breathe life back into the tomato plants. As we ventured down the winding path of the neighborhood park, our conversation effortlessly deepened. This trail once bore witness to our shared footsteps. Ben murmured gently, "My daughter." In her childhood, she found joy in gathering stones, weaving tales of their enchantment. Once, she bestowed upon me a charm, assuring me it would shield me from the weight of adult sorrow. He offered a smile, yet it fell short of illuminating his eyes. "Is it still in your possession?" I inquired softly. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "The uppermost compartment of my nightstand. Whenever the thought of discarding it crosses my mind, I find myself unable to do so. I hesitated for a moment, then extended my hand to grasp his once more, reminiscent of that evening on the porch. This time, there was a resolute certainty. "I believe it continues to function," I remarked. He halted his steps, standing there under the blooming dogwood tree, and gazed at me in a manner that left me momentarily breathless. "Susan, I never imagined I would experience these feelings once more. I was taken by surprise. We have both experienced the tapestry of life. A smile graced my lips. We possess, alas, we have been defeated. Perhaps that is the very reason this holds significance. He nodded with deliberation, then delved into the depths of his coat pocket, retrieving an object with care, a diminutive, polished stone, scarcely larger than a walnut. He rotated it in his palm before delicately setting it into my grasp. You require protection as well, he remarked, my throat constricted. This kind of tenderness was unfamiliar to me. Not any longer, yet, in that fleeting instant, a truth emerged, one I had long been reluctant to acknowledge within the depths of my own mind. Trust was slowly starting to weave its way back into my heart. We continued our stroll, fingers intertwined, the stone radiating warmth against my skin. As we strolled, we encountered children pedaling on their bicycles, couples navigating with strollers, and the invigorating aroma of fresh grass mingling with the earthy scent of damp leaves enveloping us. And somewhere along that meandering journey, it struck me, I wasn't merely allowing someone to enter my world. I was making my exit, embracing laughter freely, allowing myself to be visible without embarrassment, nurturing hope unburdened by fear. As we arrived at the trail's conclusion, the sun hung low in the sky, its light stretching into elongated shadows that danced across the pavement. I'm not ready to say goodnight just yet, he remarked. I glanced at him, a smile gracing my lips. In that case, refrain from doing so. He inhaled deeply and moved nearer, his gaze probing into mine, neither hurried nor forceful, merely posing a question without words. I inclined my head in agreement. For the first time in what seemed like a distant past, I experienced the gentle, hesitant touch of lips meeting my own. Not a display of fireworks, not merely a grand cinematic explosion. Yet there is warmth, acquaintance and a whisper of potential, gently unfolding over time, if we allow it to flourish. On that particular night, the pages of my journal remained untouched. I found it unnecessary, for I was already aware of how the forthcoming entry would unfold. I believe I am succumbing to a gentle descent. This time, fear holds no sway over me. I am the light of dawn following that kiss. The world seemed to wear a new hue. The world had not transformed in any significant way. It was the perspective through which I was viewing it. I found myself lingering at the window, savoring my coffee as I watched the early light unfurl gracefully across my backyard. My shoulders seemed to lift ever so slightly, the air wrapped around me with a warmth that defied the cloudy forecast. A transformation stirred within me. Perhaps that's the outcome when you begin to embrace your emotions once more. It encompasses not only the exhilaration, but also the peril that accompanies it. The uncertainty, the potential that lies ahead. Later that afternoon, Ben called, his voice carrying a gentler tone than usual. "May I visit you?" I responded affirmatively before he could complete his inquiry. He entered, cradling 2 steaming cups of coffee, his smile tinged with a hint of anxiety. "I hope this doesn't feel too fast," he said, offering me the cup. I simply, last night lingered in my thoughts, an unshakable echo that refused to fade. I motioned toward the chair opposite mine in the sun-drenched sunroom. I found myself in the same predicament. We lingered in that moment, our drinks in hand, allowing the silence to convey what words might only obscure. Then he cast his gaze upon me, truly observed. "You frighten me just a bit, Susan," he confessed. I arched an eyebrow, a chuckle escaping my lips. "Did I at me?" He inclined his head in acknowledgement. This resonates with authenticity. For an extended period, I have refrained from allowing anything to truly resonate within me. Did I grasp that more profoundly than I could articulate? I had constructed my existence around tranquil rituals, secure boundaries, and the comfort of familiar days. It was an existence that demanded little from me, yet offered little in return. Merely sufficient. Ben was something greater. I admitted, my own fear echoing in the silence. Perhaps that is, in fact, a positive development. He smiled, and the trepidation in his gaze began to fade. The remainder of the afternoon was devoted to unearthing the thoughts we seldom voiced openly, the sorrow that lingers, transforming its form as time unfolds. The facets of our being that we concealed for countless years, the aspirations we interred so profoundly that we lost sight of their enduring existence. And gradually, an image started to emerge, not of a romance crafted in bold, vivid hues, but one illustrated with subtle shades, a tale not of second chances, but of fresh starts. That weekend, we ventured to the farmer's market side by side. Unremarkable, freshly picked peaches, warm bread, and the joyful echoes of laughter fill the open air. Yet it seemed, indeed, the sort of ordinary that transforms into a cherished memory. As spring gracefully transitioned into summer, the threads of our lives began to intertwine in subtle, yet significant ways. The gentle embrace of Sunday morning breakfasts, collaborative crossword puzzles, a mysterious book appeared on my porch, accompanied by a note. I believe this will resonate with you. We took our time with it. There was no necessity for that. Affection. Genuine affection. It doesn't always arrive with flashes of brilliance or grand pronouncements. At times, it arrives with a measured, deliberate pace, a fleeting look exchanged over the dinner table, and the comforting knowledge that someone awaits you at the door after a challenging day. One evening, as we lingered on my porch, observing the fireflies twirl amidst the tall grass, he took my hand once more. This time, neither of us wavered. "You know," he said, "I believe we discovered one another precisely at the moment we needed to." With a gentle smile, I leaned my head against his shoulder. "Negatived, it seems we found our way to one another at the moment we were truly prepared." He nodded, and the night enveloped us in a gentle embrace, akin to a soft blanket. Not all had transformed. The world beyond continued its relentless spin, unchanged and indifferent. The garden awaited the tender touch of weeding. The clock continued its relentless march forward. Yet within me, a door had swung wide. And I felt, deep within my very being, that this chapter of my life held as much value as any that had preceded it. Perhaps this marked the dawn of the most genuine chapter to unfold. One constructed not upon the foundations of youth, timing, or perfection, yet in the realm of comprehension. Regarding bravery. And the serene enchantment shared by two souls who have weathered life's storms, they have come to understand the true essence of what truly matters. Therefore, to all who may be attentive, I express this thought. Persevere in your pursuit of connection. Do not shut the door on an opportunity simply because it arrived later than you anticipated. At times, an unforeseen act can serve as the catalyst for an entire journey.